I've been getting a lot of messages from creatives around the world asking, Arsalan, you mentioned that you have been a creative pretty much your whole life. And they're saying, I feel like I run out of ideas or topics, and I feel like I'm kind of burned myself out or have a writer block or creative block or whatever kind of block that's keeping me from being creative. And so they ask, how are you always creative? What are you doing? So when I start talking to them, it's really interesting how I always find the same pain point in all of these creatives. Hello dost, hello friend, how are you? Kya hal hai aapka, ki haal hai tumhara? Welcome to the brand new episode of the Abundant Desi Podcast. Once again, thank you for taking time out of your busy day, out of your busy schedule to hang out with me on our weekly date. The last two episodes of the podcast, I had the absolute privilege of having two incredible guests on in episode 33 and episode 34. So be sure to go listen to those because in both of them we talked about some really powerful concepts and amazing dialogue was had. If this is the first podcast episode you ever listened to, thank you for being here. Welcome. Hello, dost. I'm so excited to have you on here. Consider subscribing because there's a weekly episode every single week. And along with that, new videos, new content on Instagram. So if you are new, please head over to Instagram, give us a little follow and say hello, dost, when you're there. I would love to connect with you. And speaking of Instagram, we are officially to 17,000 family members of the Abundant Desi tribe over on Instagram. So thank you for being part of that community as it continues to grow and thrive. It's become a global movement, so thank you for being a part of it. And once again, thank you to my friends Riley, who was on episode 33, and my friend Stacy, who was on episode 34, for coming onto this platform and sharing their stories. Those episodes have been highly popular and a lot of downloads and listens, so thank you to you for listening and jumping in and tuning in. So today's topic, a solo session, going back to the solo shows. I'm super excited to talk about this because I've been getting a lot of messages from creatives around the world. So they ask, how are you always creative? What are you doing? So when I start talking to them, it's really interesting how I always find the same pain point in all of these creatives. The questions I asked them are, what are you doing on a daily basis? What is your daily routine like? And it seems like even though they are creatives in different worlds, whether they're writers or producers or photographers or dancers, whatever it may be, they always tell me that they're spending the majority of their time either on social media or on the computer or watching TV or just a lot of things happening in their world to keep them busy. And so I ask them, why are you usually doing those things when you're trying to be creative? And they always say that they want to keep their mind busy and it helps them when they listen to music or do other stuff. So I totally get that. But that's where the pain point comes in. And that is where something that I share with them that I want to share with you on this episode that I think is going to really help you. And again, I consider everyone a creative, but this is going to help you in whatever world you are in, whatever you're doing in your professional career or want to pursue your passion. So the way I'm going to share this is, and by the way, quick caveat, a few episodes ago, I did a whole show on 10 reasons why you should be consuming less and creating more. So be sure to listen to that as well, because that's going to really help solidify what I'm about to talk about. But what I'm specifically talking about on this episode is a brain hack or a life hack that you can start implementing immediately into your life. And so by jumping into the topic for today, I'm going to just start this off with a question. So the last time you found your amazing creative ideas and maybe had that epiphany, what were you doing in your life? Now think back to the last big, amazing creative idea that you had, whether it was a project that you started, whether it was a piece of writing that you wanted to jump in on, or whether it was like a dance routine that you came up with in your mind. What is it that you were doing? More than likely, and again, not always, but more than likely, you were probably doing nothing, right? You may have been in the shower. You may have been getting ready to fall asleep, like drift off into sleep, and then boom, an epiphany happens and you have your brilliant creative idea. You may be waking up in the middle of the night to go get some water, go to the bathroom, and boom, you come up with a creative idea. You may be stuck in traffic and your phone is dead and you're not listening to any music, and boom, you come up with a creative idea. Now, what I'm getting at here is a lot of people, and this is a harsh reality, and let's jump into this, and creatives really suffer with this. A lot of people are extremely overstimulated with everything they're doing on their daily routines with their brain activity. And neurologists and neuroscientists call this the default brain network. It's when your brain is sending off signals and nodes are going off, and there's a lot of things happening in your prefrontal cortex, a lot of brain activities happening at that moment. And so things are firing off, neurons are firing off, and your brain is going into what's called default brain network. And so this is why a lot of people say meditation is really important, because meditation, what it does is it takes your brain away from the future and takes it away from the past and brings it to the present moment, and you're really able to take in what's around you. Now, a lot of my creative ideas, I'm going to be completely honest, a lot of my creative ideas, whether it's a creative idea for a client through one of our studios, whether it's a creative idea for an episode of the podcast or a video I want to do or a talk I want to give, usually those ideas come when I am not overly stimulated in my brain activity and not doing a lot of things, or usually related to, and here's the big word, when I say this word, people are like, nah, I don't like that word, it makes me feel uncomfortable. A lot of my ideas come in the state of boredom, okay? Boredom, and this is the big catalyst of this episode. This episode is all about this, is boredom leads to creativity. And let me talk on this for a second, because you're really going to be inspired by what I'm about to share, okay? So right now in this time, we have so much happening in regards to technology. And again, I've said this numerous times over and over again, I love technology. Technology is amazing. It is an amazing platform. It's an amazing advancement in mankind, and it allows us to connect. You're listening to this podcast using technology. We connect on Instagram using technology. You watch my videos through technology. So technology is great. But the issue with technology that has come up is a lot of people are using technology way too much, and their brains are overstimulated. And because of that, the younger generation, especially these kids, and when I say kids, I'm talking about toddlers and infants, like these kids that are like in elementary and kindergarten. Researchers are discovering that a lot of these kids are having a very tough time being creative, because they are in the age of cell phones and technology. And I was born like when technology was just coming into place, and it's very interesting because these younger kids are having a tough time being creative because their brains are constantly overactive. So let me ask you this question. Again, the last time you had your most creative, brilliant thought, you may have been listening to a piece of music and it inspired you. You may have been watching a video and it inspired you. But most likely, you probably came up with a creative idea when you were doing absolutely nothing. And boredom, by the way, there's a huge misconception around the word boredom, because boredom, people are cringed out by it because they think they think boredom means there is nothing to do. There is absolutely nothing to do. And that's contrary to popular belief. Boredom doesn't mean that there's nothing to do. Boredom essentially means that from all the selections of things that you could be doing or should be doing, nothing sounds good. You are lethargic, you're fatigued, you're burnt out, you're exhausted. Nothing sounds good. You could be doing a bunch of different things, but you don't want to do any of those things, so you're completely bored. And that's what boredom is. Boredom, it doesn't mean that there's nothing to do. It's just you don't want to do what is offered to you. And so a lot of my ideas, so by the way, a quick tip on this, I keep a journal, a small creative journal, I call it, next to my nightstand in bed. And so in the middle of the night when I wake up, sometimes I have to let Stella out, or if I get up, I want to get some water. I usually wake up with brilliant ideas. And I found that if I don't write those down immediately, so I'll take my notebook and my journal and I'll just write down the ideas, even if it's quick thoughts, like a quick line, like idea for a podcast or idea for a video, or just something that I just, came up with at that moment. Then I wake up next morning and I look at that and I don't even remember sometimes coming up with the entirety of the concept of the idea, but just writing it down helps me go further with it. So if you don't write that down, if you had this happen, I bet you, as you're listening to this, you're about to nod your head. How many times have you woken up in the middle of the night with a brilliant idea, something that's phenomenal, and you're like, that's exactly what I want to do. That is what I need to do. That is how I'm going to solve this problem. You wake up the next morning and you just rack your brain. What was that idea? I remember coming up with something, but it has escaped my mind, and it has escaped your mind because now your mind is in full default brain network and you have completely lost that idea. So write it down. That's a big tip. Write that idea down as soon as it comes to you. Having a little sketchbook or a notebook or something with you to write ideas down is a great idea. And then also when you're taking a shower, a lot of people say that some of their most brilliant ideas come to them when they are taking a shower. That is a great way to really take note of this, because when you're taking a shower, again, you're not really bored. You're doing something, but your mind is kind of relaxed. You're in a state of, again, mindfulness. With meditation, you're being mindful. When you're taking a shower, you're in the present moment, and you come up with brilliant ideas. And again, as soon as you get out of the shower, try remembering it and then write it down, okay? A great example I can give you for let's talk about history and some of the biggest accomplishments that have happened in history. If this doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will when it comes to how boredom leads to creativity. Sir Isaac Newton, the amazing, incredible human being who, talks about gravity and discovered gravity. He was racking his brain for a very long time trying to figure out gravity and how to write about it and how to really propose it and stuff like that. And when he really discovered the idea behind it and figured it out the way he wanted it to, it happened. And again, this is written in history. We don't know what was going on in his brain, but it's, you can just take this as a metaphor if that helps. But he found out the idea about, he was just taking a stroll through the park. He was just walking through the park, and he sat down next to an apple tree. He just sat down, and while he was sitting there doing absolutely nothing, not thinking too much, an apple fell literally in his lap. And then he was able to discover the principles around gravity. Even Nikola Tesla has said numerous times in his autobiographies that some of his most brilliant ideas around the Tesla brand and everything, Tesla brand, I shouldn't say Tesla brand, everything that Tesla's come up with, a lot of those things happened when he was doing absolutely nothing. So boredom led to creativity. Boredom led to these discoveries. Boredom can lead to a lot. And there was a research done. Another really important thing you can take out of this, there was a research done where they had one group read something really boring. I believe it was, if I remember correctly, it was the phone book. They literally had one group read the phone book, and then they had another group do something creative, okay? And so what they asked both groups afterwards is come up with some creative ideas. And they found that the group that was reading just the phone book and was, quote unquote, bored while doing that, just doing something really mundane, they came up with more creative ideas than the group that was already doing something creative and then asked it to come up with creative ideas. So what that means is your brain is so overly stimulated. A lot of this younger generation, unfortunately, by the way, I sound like an old man when I say this. This younger generation, what I mean by that is these toddlers. I've witnessed this firsthand, by the way, in my nieces and my nephews. They're creative, don't get me wrong. They're so beautiful and imaginative. But sometimes when I ask them even simple questions in regards to creativity, they stumble or they have a hard time coming up with concepts around some of the most simple, minute things, because they're so overly stimulated with their devices and phones and all this stuff. So if you are a creative entrepreneur, and if you are in the creative world, and even if you don't think you're creative, you are, take this lesson and apply it to your life. Take some time, turn off your devices. Put things on, I've talked about this in previous episodes. Put your phone on airplane mode, or just shut it off and put it in a different room. Put it under a pillow. Put it somewhere where you don't know. What I do, I've shared this in a previous episode. What I do is, if I need to get in a creative zone of genius mode, I will turn my phone off, or if I know I need to edit and get a lot of stuff done, I will turn my phone off and I will hand it to Crystal and I will tell her, put this in a different room, put this wherever you want, but you cannot let me use this phone until I tell you that I'm done with this project. And she does. She is very good at making sure that I don't get to touch that phone until I'm done, and I get so much done in that time. I will turn off my Wi-Fi on my computer, I will completely zone out, and I'll get focused, okay? So if I want to come up with creative ideas, I try not to put too much pressure on my creativity by coming up with creative ideas on the spot. If you're constantly telling someone, come up with a creative idea, it's really hard to just come up with a creative idea when your brain is already overworked and overly stimulated. So what you need to do is take a pause, turn off your devices. And by the way, I'm a huge podcast listener. Sometimes what I need to do is actually what I'll do is not listen to anything, no music, no podcast, and just go on a walk. Go on a walk, enjoy some fresh air, just like Isaac Newton. Go sit by an apple tree and just enjoy being in the present moment. Enjoy nature, enjoy the fresh air, and you will be blown away by some of those moments where you don't know where to go next with your creative endeavor or project or writing or whatever you want to work on. You'll be blown away how boom, an epiphany kicks in and literally the skies will open up and this idea that you've been really racking your brain on, this idea just unfolds naturally and really showcases where you need to go next, what you need to do next, okay? Take this, run with it, and by the way, do me a favor, when you do put this in practice, go over to Instagram, send me a direct message. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you as you put this in practice. I want to hear from you. What is it that you're struggling with right now and how just literally a little bit of boredom in your life has led to that epiphany and finding the discovery for what you need to do next, okay? So reach out to me on Instagram. Take a screenshot of your mobile device or whatever you're listening on, like if you're like listening on the computer or whatever. Take a screenshot, take a photo, post on your Instagram stories, tag me so I know you're tuning in, you're connecting, and I would love to hear from you. And one more ask, I have not asked for this in a very long time, and it's long overdue, so I'm going to ask because I know there's a lot of new listeners. If you find this podcast of value, if you've been listening in recently, if you're going to go back and listen to other shows, if you find my voice nice and soothing, if you enjoy this Abundant Desi, if you enjoy my mission, if you support my cause, I have a very simple, this is going to take 30 seconds, but it would mean the world to me. Please consider, if you're listening on iTunes on an Apple device, consider going over to the iTunes Apple device section of this podcast and leave a 5-star review. And even if you don't want to write out a review, just hit that 5 stars. It would mean the world because when you do that, what you're doing is you are showing the algorithm on iTunes that this podcast and this movement and this endeavor and this project that I'm on is really impactful and it's going to change the lives of millions of people beyond the 17,000 already that we have amassed thanks to you, okay? Very simple as 30 seconds. And if you do feel compelled to write something, write a couple lines, and I would love to feature your review on a future episode of the show. Okay, so go over to iTunes, leave a 5-star review. It would mean the absolute world. I want to hear from you. Let me know how this podcast has helped you. And again, as always, reach out to me. Let me know how I can help you. Subscribe to the show if you are new. And if you are new, hello, those. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening in. And if you are listening to the audio version, be sure to subscribe on YouTube as well because I'm looking at the camera right now as we record the video version of this, okay? Thank you again for listening in and go be bored for a little bit. Find some creative juice, find some creativity. And until next week, we will see you very soon, those. I love you. Go out there, be amazing, be abundant, and we will see you soon. Thank you, those.